Have you wondered what financial advisors actually think about finances? This is your sneak peek at the conversations within Financial Design Studio. Michelle Smollenberger, the CEO here, will be your host as you go behind the designs.
Welcome to today's episode of Behind the Designs. We are so glad you decided to listen because this is going to be a great episode, really helpful. I am your host, Michelle Smollenberger, the CEO and a financial advisor here at Financial Design Studio. But before we dive into all the meat, I want to welcome Trevor Meyer back to the mic. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, glad to have you. This is going to be helpful. Trevor is our COO and our data security coordinator here for our firm, which is all about risk management. So he is the person we want to hear from and talk to. So this is going to be really helpful. Today's episode is all about spotting scams and avoiding financial fraud. As financial advisors, it's our job to protect our clients. We see all kinds of scams because people reach out to us, whether they know someone who's trying to recover from this kind of a disaster or whether it's a client that we're trying to help avoid it. Scams will cause permanent financial damage. So if you get scammed, I just want you to hear very clearly and you lose money, it's very unlikely that you will ever recover that money. And the last thing that we want is for that to happen to you. So that's why we have today's episode. We want you to be aware of what is out there. The danger is real and everyone's a target and any of us can be deceived. But what I also want you to hear very clearly is that you don't need to be afraid. This should not make you more fearful. We just don't want you to be afraid of getting scammed, so we want to give you the information. So that's why in this episode, we are going to teach you how to spot scams and avoid financial fraud. And as you are listening, we would recommend you send this episode to just people in your life. So whether that's parents, children, this is for everybody. So I want to give everyone an overview of kind of the crazy scams out there. So we're going to do a couple lightning rounds right here. Trevor, why don't you just kind of list for us who's a target, and then also how would I even know that I'm being scammed?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting to note is, quite frankly, anyone can be a target. It's almost too interesting where some people think that, I'm not going to be a target because of X, Y, or Z. Those people can very well and easily be targets. But I would say most commonly the folks that we see targeted are probably seniors. So people who are in retirement, late retirement, or whatnot. College students, as those folks are just starting to kind of get out on their own and are just really open and wanting to learn a lot of different things. People who are, I don't want to say alone, but typically don't have the support structures around them and whatnot, but want to be able to help others. So those are probably the big top three, I would say, of people we see most targeted from scams.
What are some red flags that when we hear them, we're like, oh, okay, we need to pay attention?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that comes to mind is something absolutely immediately cannot wait, has to get done right now at this very moment. I know that's a lot of words, but the reality is just urgency. Because when you have something that's urgent, our brains are wired in such a way that we want to get it done. I'm a very get it done kind of guy. And one of the things that I need to slow down and remember myself is, what is the reasoning with which we are doing something? So urgency is far and away one of the biggest. I think the next biggest one that comes to mind is the idea of secrecy. You can't tell anyone this because of X, Y, or Z. One of those reasons might be shame, to say, the scammer is suggesting to you that you made a mistake in some way, shape, or form, and they're going to lose their job. So you have to rectify this in whatever certain way that they might present. So I think those are one thing. Trying to think what other ones. I guess the next one is, just an idea of striking fear. Anything that's going to say, hey, you're going to strike to the core and you're going to incite fear in a certain person. That's one of the things that you should recognize to say, hey, something's off here. I feel really fearful about this situation. Why am I feeling fearful about this situation? Do I need to slow down and take a better look?
Yeah, that's a great summary because of the people that we've talked to that we know, these are just some of the common ones. And usually it's the emotions that they kind of target. And so that's what causes you to act. So they strike that or cause that emotion by whatever it is, whether they're scaring you, whether they're telling you can't do something. Yeah, great summary. Thank you. All right. Now, there's some big kind of broad topics of different types of scams that we're going to talk through today. So we've kind of grouped these into various groups. Let's just kind of list some of these big groups that we're going to cover.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I think I've seen most recently is relatives just reaching out for money. As you have a long-lost nephew, or your niece is in jail, or a grandchild that needs help, any one of those situations. I think we have a specific client experience that has that situation occurring. So that's a really common one.
Like the imposter. So it's kind of like someone is, acting as an imposter or trying to like act as someone that they're not. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way that the scammer gets your information is frankly social engineering, right? So seeing some of your social media posts, recognizing who your family members are, and building a persona of what that person might be, and then using that against you. I think the reality too is, as we step into this world of AI and being able to have imposter voices and AI trained models of what our voices sound like, that's another very real possibility that, someone might actually call you and it sounds just like your sister, or it sounds just like your brother or your niece or nephew, like a family member that, someone you would very much help out. But it's not that person.
Yep.
So,
yeah, no, that's a great summary of that category. Now computer stuff. So computer problems, that's another big one that we see.
Exactly. And I think in that line, one of the ones that comes to mind is, let's say someone reaches out that you have an issue on your computer, or there's a big screen that pops up and you have to find a way to get this resolved. And the way you get this resolved is they say, hey, I want to look at your screen with you. Here's how we fix it. Here, we just need to apply this credit. And here's this extra money. But in reality, they do something on their end that's basically says, hey, instead of a credit, it debited. So it costs them money. And oh gosh, they're going to lose their job. So again, inciting the fear of you have to step into some computer troubleshooting issues. And unfortunately, if they're moving fast, it's hard to see what's going on the computer.
Exactly. So the next one I think of is just internet relationships. And you think this is for just young people, but we're going to talk more about this. It's young and old. So that's actually becoming a bigger one. Financial fraud. This is a bigger one we see with financial transactions. So
exactly. I think the thing that comes to mind there is, and this is why we have policies in place of kind of going through anytime a client requests a wire. Wires are really important to remember that once the money is there, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get the money back.
Yes.
So anytime a client is going to request a wire, we have very stringent policies in-house to verify that here's where the money is supposed to go. And we check it not just once, but multiple times to verify that, hey, you're buying a house? Great. Okay, let's make sure that the title company has all the right information. And we verify it not just with a client, but we also verify it with the title company itself. So.
Yep. No, that's really helpful. Those are kind of the four main categories, and we're going to dig deeper into each of those, kind of within each area, how to do the best you can to avoid, being scammed in these areas. So there's going to be a lot of helpful information in here. So let's jump back to that imposter scam. So this could be anyone. It could be relatives reaching out, asking for money. It can even be people that are authorities. So authority figures in our life. So it could be, the IRS. It could be actually like a police officer or someone like that. So people who should have that credibility in our lives, employers, recruiters for a job. So let's start to talk through some of these just relatives reaching out for money. Like you mentioned, like the Nigerian prince that we've all, this long lost relative, which it seems like such an old scam.
Yep.
It's still out there.
Yep.
That's probably one that a lot of us probably know when we see it. Like we see the email and we're kind of like, yeah, no. But talk us through a little bit about these, like the people that we know or.
Yeah, I think if we pick on that, the whole Nigerian prince scam, for a lot of folks, we've had it for so long. and we've seen those emails come back and forth many times. One of the things we start to learn to do is recognize those emails are just flat out fake, right? And thankfully, spam filters are catching a lot of that or whatnot. But if we look at those emails over time, the grammar, the sentence structure, all of that is getting better and better and better. And it's getting harder to spot the fake. Again, I mentioned it before, but with the whole idea of AI, that's getting even more easy to do for these scammers. And it's really important to say, okay, if you're going to get an email, who's the actual email coming from? Is it actually the email address that you already have saved in your contact records for your friend or your sibling or your relative? It's really important to check on that. Okay, is that email address legitimate?
For that specifically, I think when I look at an email, so let's say that I get an email from Trevor Meyer, like, I know Trevor, and so it seems a little strange, the language. I'm like, this doesn't seem like something he would send. So you're saying, so I look up in the email and I see, like, if I just look at the email, like the from to like the sender information, I'll see your name. But a lot of times you have to click right like on your name to actually see the email address that it's coming from. Right. So that's something, people might just look quickly and see the name and say, oh yeah, I trust this person. However, click on that because then I might see that it's actually from trevor.data.cea, and so that right there tells me, well, this is a weird email.
Yep.
So it's just something little like that, right? That people may not know.
Exactly. And even in the corporate culture, right? Internally, we've had those emails bounce through where we've had members of our team supposedly request to change their direct deposit information. And, thankfully we have a small team and we, communicate daily, multiple times a day of what's kind of going on. Here's what needs to happen. And we kind of chuckle about it internally, but there's a real issue with if people are able to socially engineer who's on our team, be able to send emails based on this person. But again, to your point, we can look at the email header. That's what that technology is called. It's the email header. Who is this email actually coming from? What is the domain address? And if it doesn't match with what you expect, that's an issue, and you can ignore it, you can report it, all that fun stuff.
And because you can quickly see, oh, well, Trevor's email is this. Oh, this is not that. So right then you can spot that easily. So that's kind of one little helpful thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one, especially with the relatives, kind of going back to what you had suggested of, positions of authority. And one of the ones that is always interesting to me is the IRS. No one likes paying taxes, and everyone is terrified of the IRS coming after them. But one thing, if you just want one takeaway from this podcast episode, is the IRS will never call you and demand money. That is not how the IRS operates. I'm sure Steve has mentioned that multiple times. But they're going to take their time. They're going to send you letters. And just because the first letter comes through doesn't mean that they're immediately coming after you 2 days later, right? They're not going to call you and request demand money, especially they're not going to call you and request it in gift cards. I don't know how the IRS can accept funds from gift cards anyway. So that's just not feasible on their end of things. So.
And while we're on that subject of paying for anything with gift cards, I just think of like medical facilities. You might get a bill, so they bill the insurance, and then you get the bill for the remainder. And just again, even in that instance, if they're demanding money, if they're saying we need it right now, that's why there's this process of, okay, after so many days, then you might go to, to this payment processor where it's kind of, okay, now they're asking you for money and saying you're going to be penalized if you don't pay it. But because things in the mail sometimes doesn't get where it should go, like that's why we allow for this time. So if anyone's rushing you and pressuring you, wait. There should be a buffer in here if it's that type of a bill, for example, that might help you to know.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you can do if you're unsure and there is that sense of urgency, ask why. The question of why is immensely powerful. Yeah. Because if someone is saying, "Hey, you have to get this done right now, or else," well, why? And unless they can clearly articulate for you the reason why it has to get done right now at this very moment, take your time. Because the worst case scenario, okay, if it does get sent to collections, that's not great, right? We don't want that situation to happen, but it is far better than losing and being scammed out of money.
I think that's a really great piece of advice just for people to say.
Yeah.
Why is this so urgent? Yeah. That's great. I think that's helpful. I just think as people, we're trained to be nice and kind and friendly. And so when I think of that, I'm just kind of like, oh, like that to me, I'm like, oh, I'm being confrontational. But sometimes, like, think about it. In order to protect yourself, you have to possibly be confrontational, ask a tough question. But if it's someone where this is legitimate, they'll have no problem answering it. So
That's exactly
you're
right.
not being unkind or mean. It's just you're asking for the facts.
Yep.
So
And even if that is challenging to do, I think you can layer it in such a way to say, hey, just to make sure I'm not challenging you or something like that. If someone's asking for money, could you help me understand why this is needed to be done right now? And
Yes.
I think framing a question like that, could you help me understand why, is really helps people kind of put their defenses down. And if it is someone that is legitimately asking for money and needs it, or needs your assistance with that, again, they should be able to not be defensive. Not necessarily defenseless, but they would not necessarily need to be defensive in answering that question for you.
yeah, unless you think that we're making a big deal of something that isn't. Some of these people are really good, and they will say things like, because if you don't, we're sending the sheriff to your house. I mean, think about how that's going to get you to act if you hear that response from somebody. And someone who does not have like full mental ability to really think this through on the spot, like that could get somebody to act. So that's where you really have to, we're going to talk about like how relationships are so important. So especially, and this is why we talk about this so much or have recently on the podcast, is because if you have a relationship with someone, you know what's normal, what's not. You can also ask, and you also have trusted people you can ask. So if someone says something like this, you can say, okay, I'll take my chances, and then call a friend and say, could you come over just in case the sheriff does show up? I mean, it's things like this where having those relationships and trusted people are so important as part of this protecting you in things like this.
And it makes sense to some folks, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to others because it doesn't always feel like an emergency.
Right.
But if someone is claiming that the sheriff is on their way to come arrest you if you don't take care of an issue right now, call 911. 911 will very easily be able to tell you very clearly whether there's a police officer on their way, if there's a warrant out for your arrest. If someone is claiming that the sheriff is on their way to come arrest you, 911 will be able to tell you if that's actually legitimate.
Yeah. I just think it's helpful because, and I know some of you listening are like, this sounds pretty intense, guys. Like, I don't think this scams. I am telling you, someone needs to hear this today, that you need to talk about this with somebody. We've seen it. So this is what happens to people in these instances. You are scared. You are caused to be fearful. And because of shame, because of fear, you do not talk about it. And so what happens is a lot of money gets sent. So people that we have helped, money gets sent before they actually tell someone the truth, or before someone says, you know what, that just doesn't sound right. And then it clicks that they're being scammed. So this is why we're saying this, because these are the things that they really do to get you to act. So, and it does work. Okay, let's just touch really quick, just kind of like a recruiter offers you a job. Before you get started, you need to fill out some forms. So, people are looking for jobs. That sounds like a reasonable request, right?
Yep. Absolutely. And, filling out forms and applications, not unheard of. The one where I would probably stop is if they're going to request what's called a W-9. So requesting, more specific, detailed information that only a true employer would need. A W-9 is essentially the big piece of information they're looking for. There is not just your name and address, but your social security number. So that W-9 is essentially going to give someone another point with which to infiltrate your financial life. You should not fill out any W-9s until you already have a job offer in hand and you're actually going through the onboarding process. Any employer who is going to require you to purchase something in exchange for coming on board as part of the team is a scam.
Yeah.
Right? Employers have budgets for onboarding new employees. We do even internally here to say, hey, if you need a new computer to do your job, we have already prearranged to purchase that computer. There should be no expectation for any employees to say, oh, I need to lay out 2, 3, it's not that much in the grand scheme of things, but $200-$300 when you stack it up will start to add up very quickly. So, yeah, as a part of the application process, you should never be paying anything for out of pocket, even if the employer says, hey, we'll reimburse you. Now, where could this be adjusted is to say, hey, maybe you need to fly for the interview. If that's the case, you can go purchase your own ticket, but you would not want to use the employer, their link, or their supposed employer, their link to purchase any tickets. Go directly to Google Flights or United or American or whichever airline you choose. Purchase your tickets to go to the interview if you need to, and then request for reimbursement from the employer. Don't rely on the employer saying, oh, I'll take care of it and whatnot, and pay them directly.
Now, a lot of employers will say, we will fly you out here. Fantastic. Then they will arrange the flight and they will pay for it.
Exactly.
So even in that instance, yeah, great advice, because either way, whoever's arranging it, paying for it, great. That person needs to pay for it. So if that's you, you're doing it yourself. If that's your employer, they're going to go pay for it, and they shouldn't be asking you for anything.
Exactly right.
No, that's great. Let's just summarize kind of how to avoid these imposter type scams. So, one is it authentic? We kind of talked about that. Is this an authentic email address or even phone number? So kind of, oh, this phone number this came from, I'm not sure. Because sometimes they'll call and say, oh, here's the phone number, call us back. Be sure that you're looking that up. Go online and see, okay, for the name of this business, they say they are, I'm going to use this phone number that's listed on their website instead of the one that they provided, because then you're going back through the company so that if there's something off, they can tell you when you call that number.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I think taking that a step further, if you ever get a call, let's say from Apple, right? If you get a call from Apple and it's Apple Care or whatnot, that's very easily to go look online at Apple's website. What is Apple Care's actual phone number? And if you have to pay a certain amount to get your iPhone fixed or iPad fixed, that may be real. But if you have questions, use the number directly on Apple's website, not the number that called you.
Yeah, that's another big one. Let's see. It's kind of like going right to the source rather than trusting the information you're given when you're unsure. If it's really those people, they're not going to be mad that you use a different number to just ensure their identity. So I think that's what we're really saying is kind of look at the source, kind of have relationships with people for these. Okay, that's really helpful. So let's move on to computer stuff. So again, we're not all computer wizards, so this is really common. This is the one that I think I've seen someone scammed out of the most money is through this type of a scam. So computer, something pops up. There's a pop-up. What do I do? So talk us through kind of what's happening, what we should do.
Yeah, so that can happen any number of different ways. If we're just browsing the web, going to news articles, sometimes malware can get onto our computers. And that's what this is called, malware. And it can launch pop-ups on our screen. And the remedy is to, hey, click this link and we can get connected to make sure your computer isn't infected, it's taken care of. More often than not, this type of computer scam involves you downloading a software that allows you to share your screen. Now, I'm not going to say sharing your screen inherently is bad, right? We actually use that quite frequently with clients so we can help them walk through certain things. But when you are being nudged and hey, this is the only way in which we can do it and there's no other alternative, if you don't feel comfortable, just close it. Just shut down the computer, call a friend, and try to figure out another resolution. But more often than not, the scammer will say, hey, you have to download this software. One of the most common ones that scammers use is AnyDesk. And what that allows them to do is not only see your screen, but also in some cases control your screen. So then they'll suggest, oh, you need to log in, or you make a remedy payment for this on a sham website or whatnot. And just before you hit submit or something along those lines, they will actually take quick control, adjust the numbers really, really fast before you can even notice it, and say, oh no, this actually went through as a credit. And you were supposed to pay us $20, $100, whatever the amount is. Oh my goodness, now you owe that person money or they're going to lose their job. I can tell you right now, Microsoft will not fire a computer support technician because of a mistake that was made from a billing purpose. Also, Microsoft does not allow people to accept payments over a shared screen like that. It just does not make sense for their business. And that goes for any computer service provider. I think one of the things to be mindful of, if a support technician is suggesting to you, you have to take all these steps in order to remedy the situation to prevent them from losing their job. Again, it goes back to go verify the source and say, hey, this person who suggested that they represented your company said I have to do this and I have to go purchase gift cards or whatnot. Could you help walk me through why that is part of your policy and process? And if the answer is not satisfactory, like if they can't give you a well articulated answer, it's a scam.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, so a lot of these, that pop-up comes, sometimes you can close it, sometimes you can't. I've also seen it where it may not even be your personal computer, but that was like your work computer. So it's happening on an employer's laptop. I think sometimes that can even cause kind of like embarrassment.
Yeah.
So then you don't tell your employer. But the thing that you should do is right away go to your employer's IT support and say, hey, here is my laptop. There's an issue. I need you to fix it, not you try to fix it for them, because they also need to know that if there was some type of malware that got onto your device, their security policy needs to be updated. Like they need to really like look at everybody's laptop then if something got through. So they need to be aware of this too.
Yeah. In fact, so rather than looking like the scenario where, hey, there's shame, there could actually be a lot of pride to say, hey, you recognize that there's an issue happening with this. You were the one that brought it to IT. IT was able to nip it in the bud before it became a serious issue. And what, you were to think, hey, you did something wrong. You actually did something so great that you saved the company substantial resources, whether it's money or time or whatnot, and bringing it to their attention. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I even think, okay, so let's just, like on a day-to-day basis, we all text, we use our phones. I mean, I can think just even recently text messages that I've gotten from a random phone number that says, oh, your package could not be delivered. And so in my head, I'm like, wait, I don't have any packages coming. And then I went, and any that I could think of, I'm like, I went directly to, if it was Amazon, I went there to actually track it from their site. So there was a link though in the text that I could have clicked. And of course they want me to click that. But I just ignore it. And this is the same with some of these emails that we're saying, like, just ignore them. I think what's really hard is that we're, again, kind of trained to respond when someone sends us an email, when someone sends us a text, like, I need to respond to this. I have just learned that I'm like, no, this is junk. Like, it comes from a phone number I don't recognize, and I'm not expecting any packages that I know have been rerouted and that they need to change anything. So I need to just ignore this. So delete it, move on. And I think that's something we just have to maybe learn to be okay with. And let's just say that it was something that there was actually a package that was trying to be delivered. They will reach back out to make sure that. So even if it was something that I deleted that I shouldn't have, like, if that's a package coming for you, they're going to get it to you. So they're going to reach out again, right?
Yeah. And if there's an actual issue, right, they very likely would actually call you if they can't reach you via text a couple times. So again, it goes back to, okay, if they're going to call you, they want to reroute this. Now you get the name of the company and say, oh, hey, just give me a quick moment. I'd like to call you from a number that I can find clearly on your website. You call in, you get any case numbers or whatnot that they provided you, and you verify, hey, is this legitimate or not? That's a really easy way to say, hey, let's pause, take a quick break, think critically, and then proceed. So,
yeah. No, I think that's really helpful. That's all like good advice. I just think some of these kind of pop up just when you're like doing daily life, right? We're just going to be like, oh, a text. It's such a common thing, but like, because access to us can come through all different ways, it's important to know where they come from. So I guess, how do we protect from these? So kind of this category of computer scams, we have things like password protectors, which, those have been around. So we know that's really helpful. What are just some other ways to avoid kind of some of these?
Yeah, I think one of the most common ones, and I know it's a broken record, right? Don't use the same password over and over and over again. Right? That's where password managers are immensely helpful. Because when you have a different password for Amazon than you do for Google, than you do for Apple, than you do for Microsoft, all these different places, if you have one password that you use for them, if someone is able to breach one of those sites, they can breach them all. Right? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to minimize any potential impact. I think it's really important to recognize that we are never fully 100% protected. There's always a chance that something is going to go wrong, and you're not worried. It's not worth trying to say, hey, I want to prevent absolutely 100% success rate. It's recognizing that at some point something might happen. How can you minimize the impact?
Exactly. And we're going to talk more about that. But basically, yeah, because we aren't completely 100% scam proof, foolproof, it's making sure. And it's a progression too. I remember, when I was younger, I would use the same password for everything. And, now it's kind of like, okay, over time, change the Amazon password. Okay. And now that's different from, all the others. And now then Apple is different. So it is a progression, as you start adopting this password protectors, then you change them slowly, where at least in my head right now, as you're saying this, I'm like, they're all different. Hallelujah. But it's like a progression because you get used to it and you want access and you want to log in to all the same places. And I do not want to have to go log into this. But when you realize that it does work and it's not that hard to use. So it's a progression if you're just deciding to kind of start using it, but it does get easier as you you go along.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So this is an interesting one. Internet relationships. So the two biggest scams that I have seen with the biggest impact to people was kind of that last one, kind of the computer fraud. There was an issue that popped up and they, feared this person into basically, they're like, don't tell anyone. I mean, walked this person through sending money, everything. And so, but what happened is, because you are so embarrassed and ashamed, like you don't tell anyone, but finally, they were going out of town and needed to tell someone, hey, just in case this happens. And that's when someone from the outside was like, that doesn't sound right. Like that doesn't exist. And so that's what actually stopped it from continuing. So that was the biggest one that I've been aware of. And then this other one is this type of, it's an internet relationship. And I know this sounds crazy, but just there, people are finding people online and I am not going to tell you not to do this. It's just be aware, be alert. And it's interesting because as you talk to someone and you build this relationship, in this case, this person, the person they were dating said, oh, I'm a financial advisor. Let me look at your account. Like, let me look at your investments in your 401k. Just thinking it was a harmless thing. And, oh, yeah, okay, you can help me. I trust you. We've been talking for a while. And then gave them access to this. And then it all just like spiraled from there. This is how they're so good at this, and so that's why you have to be really careful. Again, it's not that you can't meet really great people online. And I'm sure a lot of people listening say, I met my spouse online. Like, I'm so excited for you. So this is just kind of like highlighting one of these risks to be aware of. So online dating, kind of what do you see in this online internet relationship as a risk?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I have a lot of experience directly with, but kind of taking your example of, sharing your account credentials with your significant other and essentially, depleting the assets or whatnot. One of the things to remember is you can always share and share screens, right? And you can say, hey, I'm happy to share this information with you if you want to give me some advice or whatnot. But I'm not going to give you access to log in. I think it's also important to remember that custodians are actually your friend in this. So custodian's main job, so a custodian in this case is like Charles Schwab. That's the main custodian we use for client assets. But other big names are Fidelity, used to be TD Ameritrade, but Vanguard. Those are kind of the big ticket names or whatnot. But custodians are your friend in the respect that they want to keep your money safe. And they want to ensure that the processes with which they have in place keep your money safe. So if you are going around their processes to make your life easy, you're actually setting yourself up for a very easy breach. Because if you're going to share your password and your credentials with, anyone, well, it's very easy for that person to get in. Now, how do you step back and think, hey, I need to get some professional opinion on this? Well, you can download your statements. Your statements are provided generally monthly, if not quarterly, and say, okay, what are the investments? The statements include all of that information. Now, it is important to note that your statements will also include your account numbers. So you might want to redact those or scratch those off so it's not readable from that perspective. But yeah, that is a very real possibility that someone is going to develop a relationship with you, and you need to be mindful of the fact that the moment you start including money with there, kind of an antenna or an alert should probably go up to say, okay, why is this being asked? Again, it's going back to, why do you need access the way that you're requesting access? And if they can't clearly articulate that answer, hey, can we take a pause here? I just want to make sure I understand exactly what we're going to do before doing anything, because the ramifications of having your accounts depleted means you're not going to get your money back, unfortunately.
Yeah. What's so interesting is right now, as we talk about this, like internet relationships, as you're listening, you probably have a vision of an age of person in your head. Like you're probably thinking, I'm just guessing, like maybe younger, college age, a little bit older, like that might be like the first assumption. But I am here to tell you, seniors are doing a lot of online dating. And I don't give relationship advice unless I really know you, then I might. But according to, and I'm remembering the movie Frozen, where Anna tells Elsa, you cannot marry a man you just met. It's one of these things where you really have to be careful.
Yeah.
And just because we think that this applies to younger people, actually there's a lot of seniors that are dating online. And again, I'm speaking from experience in talking with people who are going through this, and like my just red flags are going up. And so I'm like, you want the best for people. And I'm like, I really hope this works out. I'm just like being really cautious for you. And so in this, it goes back to these relationships. Yep. Your friends care about you. They want you to be happy. They want you. If this is a relationship that's going to happen, they would love for that to happen for you. But your friends are also going to tell you hard truth because they're your friend and they care about you. Now, if this other person doesn't really care about you, then they don't care if you're harmed. So you really need to, be thoughtful of like your parents and your kids, like just it's all of us. And so that's why I just really wanted to highlight this one, because I'm seeing it like play out with people. And so as I hear about these, it's what happens is we're all just so shocked. We're like, I never would have guessed, but that's what I'm telling you. Like, this is happening.
Yeah.
And so you just need to be aware. And if something sounds off that a friend's telling you, just be like, hey, as your friend, I just want to mention this. Like, I'm really happy for you and I hope this works out. But, I heard this great podcast and they mentioned this. Like, it's that kind of a thing that you can just kind of jump in there and say. So
get a second opinion. I like that.
Yes. And then social media friends, there's like, just think about all these relationships, kind of these chat groups, gaming platforms. Like there's all these ways that they can like come into our lives through the internet.
Yep.
So I guess how do we avoid being scammed?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to bringing in a second voice to say, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think about this? And with any luck, that second voice is someone you have already built a relationship with that you fully trust. We encourage clients here to say, hey, reach out to us if you have any questions. I think I end just about every email I send to clients. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm more than happy to hop on the phone with you. If you want to hop on a Zoom, like, let's do it. Let's get it figured out right away. Because I would far rather us spend the time to make sure you feel comfortable with that than feel like you have to make a decision and make a money move and then not be able to ever get that money back. Right?
Exactly.
So, having that second trusted voice is immensely helpful. And I think just always being, I don't want to say cynical, but just being skeptical of, okay, why is this? Does that make sense? So.
Exactly. And what is so interesting, I think one of the most painful things as an advisor is to watch someone go through this and know that you could have helped them, but you weren't given all the information. And so you couldn't have. And so, I just remember like at some of these times when we've heard from people. So it's even friends or relatives of clients that, a client will say, hey, can you talk to my friend? There's kind of something weird. They were scammed or something. And I remember there was just a point where there was like 3 in a row. It was like of different people we were hearing from and talking to. And I just remember telling them like, this is, what has happened to other people. Like, you don't get your money back. And unfortunately, to make it worse, with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, you can't deduct losses like this either. So, I mean, if money's coming out of a retirement account, you're now later, after you're scammed out of this money, have to pay tax on those funds. Like, that just makes it even more painful when you realize the extent of this. So that's why it's so important to know beforehand, before you send all this money, making sure it's legitimate.
Yeah.
So, all right. No, that's great. All right. So kind of this last category, financial fraud. Again, some of these might seem, kind of obvious, but one we see a lot is wire fraud.
Yep.
So walk us through what happens there. What's the specific issue?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one that's getting more and more common. We see, but that also might be a factor of, we see a lot of wires for real estate transactions. So at least from our perspective, but our perspective may be skewed. But this, as it relates to wire fraud, this kind of happens where someone may have gotten access to your email account and know that you are in the process of buying a house or selling a house. Or based on just public records, they can do enough reverse searching to say, hey, you're selling your house or you're about to buy this house. And they can, make some deductions of, hey, my realtor is great. Your realtor always uses this title company. The whole lot of things. The social engineering aspect is immensely powerful. But they will get in the middle, if you will, and say, hey, these are the title or these are the account and wiring instructions that we need for sending money or receiving money. And they're not the ones that are from your realtor legitimately. In fact, a lot of realtors are getting away from providing account information for wires. So the way to kind of protect against this is, again, I think we alluded to it earlier, but if you're getting wire information to send or receive a wire, you want to verify that independently with the title company. And that means you're going to go back to the title company's website. Every title company has a website. If they don't, you need a new title company. But every title company has a website. You can go find their phone number on there. A lot of times they'll include their wire instructions on the website directly. But if you're unsure, call them and say, hey, I have this transaction for this property occurring on such and such date. They can verify for you, hey, these are what the instructions are that need to go. Now you have that piece of information. Go do the exact same thing again. So get another person to verify, hey, I received these instructions. I'm going to double check these again. You want another source that you're going to reconcile these instructions back to. And then those are the ones you're going to use. When we do wires internally with clients, so if we're wiring money from Schwab or getting funds directly wired into Schwab, we do not rely on simply just written instructions from the client. Our process involves verbally clarifying with the client exactly the purpose of the wire, exactly what property it is if it's for a real estate transaction, exactly the account that's coming from or to, and then we personally independently verified, take the steps I just alluded to, with the title companies and say, hey, we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence, because that's one of the things that we take very seriously is we want to make sure that if a client is working with us, their money is safe, and we want to do everything we can to keep it safe.
Yep, exactly. Nope, you're exactly right. And this is where a lot of times they'll just change it right before closing day. That's those are red flags, where it's kind of if something changes, last second, you really need to verify. So,
especially when, they're going to put the closing of that house at jeopardy and, this is your dream house. Again, it's that sense of urgency that it has to get done, taken care of right now, right away, or the deal is going to fall through and
Exactly. No, that's helpful. Some of these others I think about, financially, it's kind of just someone reaches out about debt collection, which we kind of touched on a little bit. Gift cards, we hear about gift card scams. Make sure that, the barcode or the code is actually covered up, even when you're in the store, to make sure that that hasn't been already scratched off. I think especially around the holidays that happens, but I think anytime, just make sure what you're buying and you're going to give that is actually, can still be used and hasn't already been used. So I guess just how to avoid some of these financial ones. It sounds like really just double, triple checking, going straight to the source again. So you're kind of seeing a theme. A lot of these are very similar. Just making sure you're going to the right place, the right site.
Yeah. One of the ones you mentioned, I just want to highlight real quick is debt collection. Because that's always a big scary word of, oh my goodness, you're going to send this to collections. What is that going to mean? Well, if you're not going to borrow money in the future, there are plenty of folks that we work with that don't have a need to borrow again. Okay, send it to collections. See if I care.
Yep.
Right? Because all that's going to mean is it's going to affect your credit report. And the only reason your credit report is used is to open a new line of credit. If you're never going to open a new line of credit, who cares?
Yeah.
Now, a way to triple check and verify, like you were suggesting, was go pull a copy of your credit report. This is a best practice that we encourage clients to do, is at least once a year pull a copy from all 3 of the major credit bureaus.
Yeah.
We've actually walked through videos of with folks how to actually freeze your credit, which we can get into of kind of making sure you're protecting yourself. But you're constantly aware of what is all the pieces of information that, financially speaking, all other companies have about you. Is that information accurate? Is there erroneous information that needs to get cleaned up, removed, whatnot? And then that way, if someone's going to come in and say, hey, this bill is on your credit report, we're about to send this collections, it's going to be really bad, you can pull up a copy of your most recent one and be like, I just pulled this last month. I'm not seeing this on here. Could you clarify for me what bill this is? Because I'm not seeing this on my credit report. Right? Again, when you're slowing down and thinking critically, you've already got the ammunition you need to put holes exactly where their story is. So
Yeah. So we're kind of saying like pause, even like wait till the next day and kind of say, okay, I'm going to think about this overnight. I'll get back to this tomorrow. Then you've had the time to like think through it. No, I don't remember this. So, and then you actually can have time to look at stuff like that. That's helpful.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Okay. So a lot of stuff that we're kind of talking about where, how to protect us, things, but so, who can we trust? What are things, if I can't trust certain people or I should be watching out for these, who can we trust? So, we talked a lot about like relationships, the people in our lives, but, what else would you list here, I guess?
So hopefully you can trust your financial advisor, right? So the things I look out for there, and I think it's really important that as you build and develop a relationship with your financial advisor, that they're always looking out for your best interests. Now, we're biased in this respect, but we firmly believe that people should work with a fiduciary. And all that means is just to say that a fiduciary financial advisor is going to put the client's best interests ahead of their own. So everything that the financial advisor is doing is in the best interest for the client. And if the financial advisor is not working for the client's best interest, they can be sued for that. So I have seen cases where there are some folks that claim they are, but then you actually read through the agreements. No, you can't actually be sued for that. So I would argue they're not a fiduciary. So that's one source. If you've worked with like an accountant for years and years and years and years, that's another great trusted resource. They very likely have plenty number of other referrals or resources that they can use. If you have a spouse, right? So trusting your spouse because you've lived with this person and recognize that, hey, you're working through finances together. So that could always be a good resource. So those are the big ones that come to mind immediately.
That's helpful just as a reminder for the relationships in our lives with these financial professionals. That's sometimes one of the biggest values is like we spot something when behavior is strange for a client, whether they're not responding and it's been a while, maybe they're just busy, but I'm just going to check in. Is everything okay? Or, hey, it's kind of, you don't normally ask for money this much or in these amounts or in this way. So, is everything okay? Honestly, like I asked a person when they were going through and they were being scammed, I asked them, I said, what could we have done? Because they didn't give us all the information. I said, what could we have done? And the response was, you could have asked me, are you having any computer problems? So like on that issue. And so it's us trying to like realize and to learn, like, what can I ask to make that person tell me? And for us to let you know, hey, I suspect something's up here. Maybe I can't ask directly, but like, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you having any issues with anything? Your computer? It's just very interesting. Like when you ask them, how could you have helped me when my mind was kind of cloudy and I wasn't thinking straight? And so that was just really interesting to me that was the response. So I think those are the things, like if you're kind of a trusted person in someone's life, like now kind of how you can ask when they're in the middle of that situation. So
and I think taking that a step further, you can prearrange code words as James Bond-esque it sounds. You can basically prearrange something to say, hey, if I'm going to seriously ask you for something, this is a prearranged phrase or word that we're going to talk about. And only you and each other know it, right? It's a form of security. And if the person can't clearly articulate, hey, this was our phrase word that we already prearranged and agreed. And to be clear, you're not posting this anywhere on social media. You're not talking about with other friends. You are keeping it, near and dear to your heart. That's another protection that you have against that.
I think one of the things that, just since we mentioned social media, what naturally happens to people, and even listening to this episode, is you do get fearful. And so you kind of think, oh, well, if they can get information from social media, then I'm just not going to post anymore. Mm-hmm. And so again, that's what we don't want you to do with, hearing something like this. It's just realizing. So if someone says something to you, like, you were at this event and we didn't get your payment, it could be like a scam or something, or some way that they could, be reaching out to you. And just think through, how would they know I was there? So if I don't know them, how would they know I was there? Okay, I did post on Facebook about that. So let me ask them something that I didn't post on Facebook. Ask something that you wouldn't have put on social media. So it's just being aware that, yes, information's out there. It doesn't mean you can't share it, because we do want to share our lives with people. Just remember and just be aware, what could I say that isn't out there to make sure if this is true?
Yeah, and then kind of on the thread of openness and transparency, I actually do believe personally of openness and transparency with your trusted loved ones. So I'm a big proponent of talking through, if you have children, talking through with your children, hey, here's how much money mom and dad have. This is where it all is. This is, what our intentions are with this. Now, they don't need to know the details of it, but it's important to know to say, okay, here's where everything is and here's what it's doing. And the more that you can involve your family members, again, trusted family members, to say, here are the things that we're doing to set everyone up in a really powerful and meaningful way. Now, when you start having, a potential scammer come in and say, oh, well, I need this because of this, this, and this. Well, you've already had discussions with your family member, if they've been looped in, to say, that's not in alignment with what we've talked about before. Again, goes back to, well, why are we asking this right now? Because that does not seem to be in alignment with what we talked about before. It's another way to kind of punch a big old hole through their scammer story, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. All right, so what should I do if I do get scammed? What would you say?
Tell someone, right? So it's as much shame that you feel might come about it. I think there is something really powerful and important of sharing your story, recognizing that even if financially speaking, you may not be able to get those assets back, someone else may potentially be prevented from losing their assets. So there's powerful benefit in sharing that. Your trusted relationships, they're going to come alongside you, right? They're going to recognize that this was a really challenging, tough situation. I want to come alongside you and support you in any way, shape, or form that I can. Maybe that's financially, maybe not. But either way, recognizing that your trusted relationships are going to be there to support you.
No, that's huge. The other big instance that I think of is someone, it was someone that I knew, like, through church. I was connected with them because they had gone through this. And so this was through, like, a dating relationship. Were scammed, let someone log into their, just like the 401k. What happened was then they got personal information, opened all these credit cards, a business, all of this stuff. So now if we kind of think, okay, how to be scam proof, what are kind of these big things? This is why we're talking about these. Yeah. So freezing your credit in that example, again, we aren't 100% scam proof, but we can limit the financial damage.
Yeah, it's essentially you're reducing your convenience, but you're reducing your convenience at the sake of making sure you're more secure. You already touched on it in the respect of, I don't feel that anybody is 100% scam proof, right? Especially in the age of AI and being able to imitate voices and, written communication. I don't think it's possible to be 100% scam proof, but I do think it is possible to limit our exposure in such a way that, we are as reasonably confident as we can be that the people that we are interacting with are legitimate. But along those lines of the things that you can do to help get you closer to that 100% mark are, you've already touched on it, freezing your credit. You're going to reduce your convenience there because the next time you go to open a credit card, it's going to get blocked. And the reason it's going to get blocked is because your credit's going to be frozen. So now the next step you have to do is, hey, bank or credit card company that I want to open a account for, I understand you're going to run my credit. Which credit bureau are you going to run from, whether it's one or multiple? We need to go temporarily unfreeze our credit so that way they can run the credit report and view that. Same deal for a car, house, any of that fun stuff if we're using a car loan or a mortgage.
Even using credit cards, that's another one, because like those expenses that get put on there, you don't pay them until they're legitimate or until the bill comes. So if it wasn't a legitimate expense, that should give you protection from having to pay for that.
That's exactly right. That's one of the things there. People that are big Dave Ramsey fans don't like our perspective on this, but it's one of the things that there is power in using, frankly, other people's money at that regard and to protect your own. And that's, just a quick recap. When you use a credit card, if I'm going to go to Starbucks or I'm going to go buy groceries at Jewel, you're essentially saying, hey, I'm going to take a temporary loan from the credit card company. We have a credit card through Chase. Chase is going to give me a temporary loan. As long as I pay that loan off by the statement date, Chase is not going to charge me any interest. So that's a really great, powerful thing with there. I'm not using my money until I actually move money from my checking account over to the Chase credit card. Now, if there, like you said, if there is an issue, there's a fraudulent transaction, someone got in the middle of it, the good news is you can just tell Chase, hey, those are fraudulent transactions. I'm sorry, you're going to have to work through to figure out what that is. Now, if you had a situation where someone was using your debit card and your debit card got out there, well, now you have to fight with your bank. Let's say you bank at Chase as well. Now you have to fight with Chase and say, well, Chase, these are fraudulent transactions. I need my money back. And Chase is going to say, okay, well, great. We'll open an investigation and we'll try to figure out what that's going to look like. But that's going to be time. And hopefully it's taken care of in a very quick, efficient manner. But we don't know. You're fighting with the bank to get your own money back. Whereas with the credit card, it's like, hey, I'm sorry this happened, but, good luck, because I'm not interested in using this credit card anymore.
Exactly. Yep. So it's just a protection for you. I think of just even minimizing, again, exposure. So if I don't even want, minimize even the ability to get some of these offers, there are, you can opt out of some of these call lists for 5 years. And we can put this information in the show notes, but passwords, data security, all of these things protect you from even getting these offers to begin with. So that can be helpful. So just basic. Some of these are just even checking your mail. I know a lot of people just kind of leave their mail in their mailbox for a week and check it at the end of the week. It's just even basic behaviors like this. Go get your mail, even if it's normally junk, just in case there's something in there, that has information on it, that has your, personal information. Yeah,
and actually, I'm glad you brought up the mail, because one of our clients from years back, actually, when we first started working with this client, put me onto the idea, because I hadn't heard about it. But the U.S. Postal Service, USPS, has a service called Informed Delivery. And essentially what they do is they take a scan of literally every piece of mail that's going to come in, and they send that to you via email. Now, when you get your mail, if it is checking every once a week, we would encourage to check it more frequently. But you can cross-reference those email scans with the mail that you received.
Yes.
If you're not seeing a piece of mail that you got a scan for, hey, something's up.
Yes.
Why didn't we get this? Especially if it's a credit card statement or a brokerage statement. Any one of those situations, we can look at things and say, hey, something's off here. I need to go track this down. First step there would be to call USPS. I don't see this piece of mail. Can you clarify for me why I'm not seeing this? They may be able to help. They may not. If you're unsure as to what to do next, I would call either the credit card company or the bank statement or the brokerage company or the custodian, and say, hey, something's off here. I didn't receive this piece of mail. Can we just put the account on a restricted basis right now? And more often than not, the bank or the custodian will be more than happy to help you with that.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think it's super helpful. I know there's been things that have been in the scan that I've, that email that you get every day. And so I know what's coming. But then a couple days later, it might come. So there are absolutely times where something sticks to, and then, your neighbor returns it to the post office and then they have to redeliver it. But it's at least, that it should be coming and it's not. That's very helpful.
Yeah. So USPS Informed Delivery.
Yep. Because it's tax season right now, do not email personal information.
Oh, yes.
This is a huge one right now. It's so convenient to just scan your W-2, take a picture, text it, send it through email, but there is personal information on these documents and other documents that you're sending. all of these professionals today have secure portals that they have you upload your data to, your documents and things like this. So if they don't, then you're probably dropping it off in person. But just realize like these professionals are working to keep your information secure too. So don't be providing information other ways.
And I'll also chime in that these systems and these tools are not expensive, right? So if your professional is not using one, you can broach that topic with them and say, hey, this is something that's really important to me. I don't feel comfortable sharing my personal information electronically with you in an unsecure fashion. Email is notoriously unsecure, right? Yeah. So if we take a step back and we say, hey, I would love to continue working with you. We've had a great relationship for X number of years. Is it a system where you could look at doing this? And, if you're looking for ideas, we're happy to provide ideas for different tools to use, but they are very cost effective and they're really easy to implement. So there's really no reason that any trusted professional should not be using a tool like that.
Exactly. No, I think this has been really helpful. Yeah, just in summary, there's a lot of ways that, people have access to us that we can easily be fooled, but there's a lot of also a lot of ways that we can protect ourselves. So I think this is really helpful for people to hear and to highlight that.
Yeah,
anything
absolutely.
You have to kind of finish, or do you feel like this has been a really good summary?
No, I love the topic. I love kind of going through the whole idea that there is a way to protect against ourselves, but recognize and take the assumption that just because we think we're protected does not mean we should feel absolutely 100% overly confident that nothing's going to happen. I take the approach of, yes, you want to do everything in your power to secure things as much as you can, but the best form of security is monitoring, right? So continually to monitor, check your credit reports each and every year, check your statements from your bank, check your statements from your custodian. Is everything in line with the way it should be? And if something seems amiss, don't be hesitant to call it out, because if there is an issue, it's much better to get that taken care of earlier than later.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. No, thank you for joining us, Trevor. I know it's always helpful to hear your insight and your advice.
Yeah, happy to help. Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. So as we finish up this episode, we really do not want you to be afraid. So that's the purpose of sharing this with you. We just really want you to keep your eyes open and be careful with in who you share information with. So, but live your life. So don't be afraid. You can still live. It's okay to use all of these tools. We have to buy and sell things. So it's just making you aware. So if you have people in your life who you can trust, like your advisors or your family, who have your back, they know you, then you're in a really good spot. If not, maybe that's even a first step of just saying, wait, I need to let some people in to help me, and just kind of, make sure that I have someone that I can talk to if I ever think that there is something. If you ever need someone to talk about issues like these, you can always reach out to our team at Financial Design Studio. We are here to help, and we do want to restore and make sure that you have confidence in your finances. And if you found this episode valuable, be sure to send it to someone else. And for now, that is all, but we will talk to you on our next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. To find any links or resources related to this episode, check out our show notes. Your host was Michelle Smallenberger, a certified financial planner and CEO. The guests featured are from Financial Design Studio, a team of experienced, fiduciary, fee-only advisors based in Chicago. Anna Lewis is the executive producer of the Behind the Designs podcast. And as always, for more information about Financial Design Studio and who we are, check out our website, financialdesignstudio.com. And final note, no content discussed on this podcast should be taken as financial advice. Financial Design Studio accepts no responsibility for your individual choices. We'll see you in the next episode.